how do we adapt? How do we survive in all these different situations that we're put in? How do we grow where we're planted? Hey, I am so excited to be here with you today. I'm Africa, and we're going to be talking about that advice you hear all the time, that you need to grow where you're planted. And I don't know about you, but I am really sick of hearing this advice, to grow where you're planted. And what does that even mean anyway? I'm looking at trees outside. I see them in the ground, and some of them do really well, and others struggle and wither away. And they're trying to grow where they're planted. And that's what really got me on this. It's like, how do we adapt? How do we survive in all these different situations that we're put in? How do we grow where we're planted? So I realized first, what does it mean to adapt? You know, some people never even get to that point because it is a process. We have to adapt where we are. And I'm thinking about myself. I moved from California out in Santa Cruz, where I was just loving life, and back into Texas, where I'm just like, whoa, it is so hot here. And I need that time to become acclimated. Well, how long does that take? How long will it take me to adapt to the climate or to the environment that I am, so I can begin survival, right? I know that some people see adaptation and survival as a continuum. I guess you could say that. But to me, the first step is to adapt to your surroundings so that you can start making an attempt to figure out how to survive. And trust me, this is going somewhere, and I think you're really going to like it. But the first step is to adapt. So what do you need to do in your situation where you've been planted so that you can grow? How do you adapt that situation? Going back to trees, you know, if I was going to plop a redwood tree out here, yeah, it's not going to survive. There's no way it's going to get enough moisture out of the air to nourish itself. But we have other trees here. We have live oaks and mountain laurels and those kinds of, I don't know all the names of the trees. We have all those trees that have adapted over time to survive in droughts and really high heat. They've adapted. So as a person where I get to even think a little bit more, right? I have self-awareness. I can do other things to adapt to a situation rather than just kind of curl up in a ball and say, oh, well, and kind of wither away like a tree might, like a redwood probably would do here, right? It doesn't have the self-awareness or wherewithal to make adaptation changes within this cycle. Maybe over many, many, many cycles and many, many children later of that redwood, maybe it would figure out how to adapt and survive in this situation. We can do it faster, right? So there's the adaptation point. Now survival is where we're taking it a step further. We're going further, like, okay, we're kind of acclimated. We kind of understand what's going on. We're looking around. We know what our resources are. What resources can we use to survive in the situation, in the environment that we find ourselves in? And there's always a way, right? Some people are like, oh no, I've been in this situation, there was no way I could survive. Then you wouldn't be here telling us about it. There's always a way. This is really about where I would say it isn't easy and it isn't hard either, right? It's not neither easy nor hard. In fact, that is the exact way I'm going to look at it. When you're going for survival, it's all about perspective, right? We have to go into perspective. We've got to find at the first meaning. So in order to adapt and to survive, right, we're looking around for resources. We're trying to change our perspective. Part of changing that perspective is figuring out the meaning. Why are we here? What is the lesson we can learn through this? What is the silver lining? What is that golden nugget? What is the meaning behind this? Sometimes you could say there is no meaning. I'm here to tell you there's always a reason that you've been asked to grow where you're planted. Sometimes you have to wait longer to find it, and you've got to do that as you're starting to survive, but there's always something that will come up. Something that surface will come up at the very least pretty quickly. And then other things that have more depth, right? Things that will have a lot more depth for you. And maybe you only find out after you've gone through the whole situation, the depth of it all. But no, there is a reason, right? And I want to clue you in on a little bit of something. I'm looking at my notes over here. If you find yourself where you are struggling, seriously struggling, you're like,
I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know how I'm going to dig myself out of this situation.
Whatever words are playing around in your head right now. Struggle happens at all income levels and in all places, right? Just as thriving happens at all income levels and in all places. Again, it is all about perspective. And I am reminded of that. Me might see it all the time on social. See this bus going on a mountain, and this one guy's looking out one way in the bus. Everything's happy-go-lucky in the other way. It's all doom and gloom, and the two people on either side of the bus are looking up those windows next to them. And what the doom and gloom person looked over out the other where it's sunny and bright and looked out those other windows, they would have an entirely different perspective, right? That's what that little meme is trying to remind us. When things are down, when things look awful, look somewhere else. Change your perspective so you can see things can get brighter, right? That there's hope, that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So, keeping that in mind, that's why I say it doesn't matter where you are. There's always struggling and thriving no matter what. It's all about perspective. So we're going to kind of double down on perspective now. So perspective, you can be zooming in or zooming out. Just like you're looking at a picture on your computer and you're scrolling that little middle wheel on your mouse, you can zoom in or you can zoom out. And for most of us, it's that we need to zoom out. We need to see the bigger picture. Right? For a few of us, we need to zoom in and look at the details. We need to be aware of the nuance, right? So you know where you are in your own situation. Do you need to zoom in or do you need to zoom out? 9 times out of 10, it's zoom out, right? If you're just struggling, which one you need to do to gain more perspective. So what happens when you change perspective? You see the situation in a different context. Right? And that different context can change everything. And all of a sudden you can start making meaning out of what is going on as to why you are being planted and asked to thrive where you are. Right? It's about meaning making. As humans, we like to see patterns. We like to make meaning because they make things make sense in our minds. And in this case, it's actually working for us to make meaning. Right? But gain perspective. All right, so the other great thing about gaining perspective is it pulls us out of victim mode. Because usually when you're like,
I'm struggling and this is awful and I hate this and I don't know how I'm going to get out of this thing,
you are firmly in victim mode. Right? And when we gain perspective, when we zoom out or zoom in, whatever it is that you need to do when you zoom, not the context you mean, but you know what I mean about when you zoom, right? You get to change your perspective and pull yourself out of victim mode. Now, normally when someone gets out of victim mode, they get so excited. They want to go straight to action. And I really want to caution you against going from victim mode and into action. Why? Right? What I would really like you to do, and I caution you to do this because I've seen so many times as I've worked with people over way too many years that I like to talk about right now, worked with people over like decades, that when they move out of victim mode straight into action, is that they end up bouncing sooner, more so than later, back into victim mode. Why? Because they skipped a step. So when you gain the perspective you need, because you're seeing the situation in a different context, you need to take more time in observation, right? In observation and gratitude. And dare I say, in celebration, because you were able to pull yourself out, to get that perspective, to gain a new context in which to look at that situation and get out of victim mode. I think sometimes we're in such a hurry to get out of victim mode that we're just running and we skip this. And this is a very important step. And it's sometimes hard. In another video, I'll talk about what it means to just be, right? And that's what's being asked of you here, is to just be, right? Just be an observer. Just be in gratitude. This isn't time to get in action. It's not time to be the leader yet. Just be. Continue to observe. Continue to understand. Anchor in the experience, right? When we're anchoring in the experience, guess what? We don't have to learn the lesson over and over and over again. More on that in a minute. Learning that lesson over and over and over again. Right, so we're anchoring in that experience, being in gratitude for having the experience, for weathering the storm, so to speak. And once those observations have been made, and once we understand what's going on, and we are in gratitude, right, for having the experience, for coming through the experience, then we can get into action. Then we can actually make, what would say, good plans. We actually have all the knowledge needed to make, to have a strategy for moving forward, right? To make a plan or have a strategy to move forward. But not before we can gain the perspective, not before we have the observations, not before we are in gratitude, right? So now, yes, now you can get into action. Now you have all the knowledge to make the plan, right? You have a strategy. You know how you need to move forward, and you're leading, right? Whether this situation had to do with something in your life, now you can be the leader in your life again, right? Or had something to do with work or your business, or had something to do with a movement that you're leading. You now, at the moment, the time where you can be the leader once again. And that is amazing, right? So I just want to, again, reiterate, if you skip that step, you end up back in victimhood. And it becomes a cycle, right? Over and over and over again. You're not learning the lesson. So what does that look like? That looks like hitting rock bottom. That's what that looks like. And I don't know about you, I've hit rock bottom too many times. And sometimes I get so much to where I just don't want to learn that lesson. Not only do I hit rock bottom, or hit the bottom of the barrel, as I like to call it, I'm at the bottom of the barrel, I decide, no, I'm going to go underneath the barrel to those rocks, those really sharp rocks, and drag myself around, right? Because I really don't want to learn that lesson. Maybe it's something I really don't want to look at a very deep soul level, but that needs to come up to be exposed and handled, right? We get to choose, right? We get to choose how we learn our lessons. We get to choose our experiences. And we get to choose if we want to give ourselves a hard time or not. Like, there's all sorts of ways to learn lessons, some more gentle and some more painful, and we get to choose, right? There's always those decision points, right? Because at every moment we get to make a choice, which leads to other things happening. There's all these little decision points. So in all these little decision points, we make decisions that led to our lesson being one way or another, gentler or harder, or kind of middle of the road-ish, right? But as we keep having to learn the same lesson over and over again, it gets harsher and harsher and harsher. Like, are you going to get it this time? No? Okay, let's try again. Are you going to get it this time? No? Ugh. Okay, well, here's a lesson, a different, harsher way for you to learn, right? So you get to decide to make different decisions to make it a little easier, right? And not every lesson can be super easy, and not every lesson has to be really hard, but we're still at choice. And even in the middle of something that seems quite harsh, quite ugly, quite devastating, to be frank, you are still at choice. You still get to make the decisions that can lead to an easier exit rather than a rougher exit out of that particular situation. All right, so DoorDash came, and now I'm back, and do I know where I was? Kind of, because I have notes. So let's keep going here. I just want to start off saying you are the leader of your life. You are always at choice, right? Every single choice for it. Do I turn left? Do I turn right? You are at choice. Do I make this phone call to this person? What do I say? Do I say A or do I say B? You are always at choice. You are the leader of your life, right? So, and to recap, everybody learns in different ways, right? And they have the ability to change the way they learn. Why? Because we are what? What? At choice. That's right. If you remember this, that you can just write in the comments right now, I am at choice, right? Because you're always at choice. Every moment, every breath, you can make a different decision, right? You can choose a different timeline. Like, I know some of you might not be timeline nerds like I am. Like, I've been into the Marvel Universe a little on and off, and I really liked that show, the Loki show, where it's part of the timeline, TVA. I forgot what the acronyms were. The first one's timeline. And they talk a lot about people making different choices and going on different timelines, and there's one true timeline. And this goes into that we live in multiple dimensions, right? And there's different yous doing different things on different dimensions. And what I really look at is, and I love the way they had the graphic of this in that series, it's that you could have made a different decision, and it splits off the timeline. There's a timeline when you made decision A, and then there's a timeline when you made decision B. And each one of those then branch off of all these different timelines. And sometimes we're like, ooh, I wish I could jump onto that timeline over there, right? You know, this goes back to, I feel like I don't watch a lot of TV shows or even movies, and yet I have these certain ones that just get ingrained that I happen to hop on. One of them was Community, and they had this, we're on the worst timeline, right, where the things are on fire and one good person went to get pizza and everything just kind of goes crazy in the apartment. So people sometimes, me being one of those people, sometimes feels like we're on the worst timeline, right? And I'd like to go to a better timeline. I'd like to essentially timeline jump, right? And to do that, quite honestly, it's simple but not easy. Simple but not easy. It means I've got to make what? Different choices. Why? Because I'm always at choice. And as I make those different choices, as I change my perspective, as I release the things that have happened in the past, right? We all have a lot of invisible tapes that we're running. To use a phrase from Ramit Sethi, a lot of invisible tapes are running. What I like to call presuppositions, right? Those things that we're taught and we act on without even thinking about it because we just assume that they're true. So we're taught them as such a young child. And we may even know as we're older that they're not true, but we still run as if they are, right? Those are presuppositions. So we still have those things running in our background, as well as any kind of trauma we've had. And all those things, the trauma and the presuppositions, all of those things are running our show. All of those things are informing what we do in the future, informing our choices. And so we tend to keep making the same kinds of choices over and over and over again. Whereas we want to be on a different timeline. We want to up-level our character. But we keep making the same choices. How do we get out of that? We've got to clear away all that gunk. We've got to clear away the trauma. You might have heard it as releasing blocks. Going through your trauma. All of those kinds of things. And I kind of rolled my eyes there a bit. I felt it. I did. Why? Because I was so tired of hearing that as I was in the muck, underneath the barrel, scraping myself over the sharp rocks.
Release the trauma. Clear your blocks. Rewrite your invisible tapes.
Oh, I was so tired of hearing it. And it was true. It's just I didn't have, at that time, the resources in which to do that in a way that I could do it. Let's just be honest. There were some resources out there, but it didn't make sense to me, or I tried them and it didn't work. And so I wasn't able to do some of the things, or I would clear it very temporarily and it'd be right on back. It's almost as if I would unplug whatever it was from myself and it would find its way back and plug right on back in. So, and then those tapes were still there. The trauma came, the trauma reattached itself, so to speak, back in. It wasn't fully released, right? So, and essentially, here I am grinding for XP, or experience points if you don't play a lot of video games. So here I am grinding for XP and gathering resources and trying to turn them all in to level up my life, and realizing I don't know how to craft the recipe that I need in order to do the up level. That's essentially what was happening. And I don't know if you find this happening to you too. You've done all the grinding, you've gotten a ton of experience, you've gathered a buttload of resources, but when you go to craft the recipe so you can finally up-level your armor, your whatever it is, depending on what video game you're playing, right? When you go to up-level yourself, you don't know how to craft the recipe. And I don't know about you, but that just really sucks. And that's what I found myself doing. All the hustling, all the grinding, all the gathering resources, couldn't craft the dang recipe. So I had to find a different way, and I kept searching, because you have to keep searching. While you're searching, you're still gathering more experience points and you're still gathering more resources, and you continue searching. And eventually you find a way. You find a way to turn all those things into up level, right? In the game, you eventually hit the point, either just in time, or I play a lot of Stardew Valley, you open up the mailbox and there's finally the recipe you needed, or you realized it was at such and such place and you had to buy it. You finally get to it. And what's even more interesting is, let's say, and I do this a lot, again, I play a lot of video games, I will start the game over again. Right? For whatever reason, sometimes I'm playing with other people. Sometimes I've given myself certain tasks to accomplish in a period of time. I'll start the game over again. And what do I have? I have knowledge. I have knowledge that the character that I'm playing doesn't have. So when I reset the game, I still know all the things that happen in the game. I still know where to go get the recipe to up level in the game. I know now where I need to go and get, different resources or the people I need to talk to in game so that I can buy that recipe later and not just kind of wander around in the dark going, what the heck is going on? I can make better choices because I have reset. Right? Now I have the knowledge to make better choices. And now what am I doing? Now I'm heading toward that higher timeline. I am up-leveling. And I think that is such a beautiful experience, to experience it in a game and also to experience it in your life. And that's where I'm getting back to. There is a way to reset with all the knowledge you have, to get rid of all the gunk that you don't need and make better choices. There's a way to give yourself a turning point, a pivot point, right? A fixed place in time, so to speak, if you like Doctor Who. A fixed place in time to make that change so you can make other choices and jump to another timeline so that you can essentially up-level yourself. I talk a lot about that in Soulful Reset. We go through a process of resetting you, the player, not the character, but the player, so that you can create that fixed point in time, start making other choices, because you have now released trauma, blocks, unwritten, like subconscious tapes, all that stuff, and pulled in. And this is the really important part. This, going back to what we talked about earlier, to get out of victimhood, you have to change your perspective, put the situation in a different context. You have to observe and be in gratitude. When we go through a soulful reset and we're releasing all that stuff, we have to observe and be in gratitude. And as you're observing and being in gratitude, new things come in. There's a point where it's like, in order for those things not to just bounce back on you and for you not to just own them again, because you essentially are creating a vacuum that needs to be filled. And doing Soulful Reset, we make sure to fill that with the things you want, not the things you don't want. Like, we don't want these things coming back in. We want to write new tapes to play in the back of our minds, to play into ourselves unconsciously. We want to rewrite some of the experiences that we've had. So it's not just about trauma. It's about, again, context, perspective, and gratitude coming in, and love coming in. That's Soulful Reset, right? I hope that you would come and hang out with me there, because it just makes this whole process, as you go through life, you're gaining experiences. Like I said, you're grinding for the experience. You got resources. You can't seem to do the next level, get to the next level, because you don't have the crafting recipe. This is the crafting recipe. It's Soulful Reset. So you just go to soulfulreset.com and check it out. Right, I hope you do, and you're able to show up for the experience. You can grow where you're planted. And I know it's frustrating, so frustrating, because I've been there too many times. Like, some lessons I had to learn about 10, 15 times, right? You can grow where you're planted. First step is to get yourself out of victimhood by gaining perspective, by zooming out or zooming in, depending on what is needed. Being an observer, being in gratitude, right? Just being. Then you can make this beautiful strategic plan, and you start leading yourself, right? Be the leader of your life, be a leader of your business, be the leader of a movement. Like, all those things are there for you. And I want you to remember, at all times, you are at choice. You're always at choice. You can make your lessons harder. You can make them easier. You're at choice. You get to choose how you learn the things that you need to learn. Right? Always at choice. And as you sit through this live, grinding for experience points, XP, I'm going to get that lingo in there, right? As you're grinding for XP, as you're gathering resources, you need to level up. No, there's always a way to get the recipe. And you can feel around for it, wait for it to, quote unquote, come in the mail, or you come over here to Soulful Reset, get the recipe, right? And go through the next phase, next chapter of your life, an abundance of knowledge, being retooled from the inside out, from the soul level out, and have a different experience. and get further, faster, easier. All right, my loves, I have so much enjoyed our time together today. I look forward to seeing your thoughts about all of this in the comments below. And until next time, peace, joy, love to you.